Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a security philosophy that starts with a pretty radical but simple idea. Trust absolutely nothing. It's called Zero Trust, and it's not just some new software. It's about completely rethinking how we've been protecting our digital world for decades. For the longest time, security was a pretty simple story, right? You'd build a big digital fortress, a strong wall around everything important. If you were inside, you were trusted. If you were outside, you were untrusted. Simple. But Zero Trust just flips that script completely. It says, you know what? There is no inside anymore. The new rule is simple. Never trust, always verify. So why such a dramatic shift? Well, the world that old security model was built for, it just doesn't exist anymore. That whole castle and moat approach was fine when all your servers were in a basement closet, but it's completely broken in the age of the cloud. And here's the interesting part, why it fails. Think about it. In the cloud, there's no single edge, no clear perimeter you can actually defend. Your apps, your data, your users, they're everywhere. People are logging in from home, from a coffee shop, you name it. A single wall built around, well, nothing, is pretty useless. And this really gets to the core of it. We're not just talking about a small change in tactics. This is a fundamental mismatch. The very nature of the cloud, how it's so dynamic and spread out, it just doesn't work with that old security model. It absolutely demands a new way of thinking. Okay, so if the old way is broken, what do we do? That brings us to this trust no one rule. See, Zero Trust isn't some product you can just go out and buy. It's really a strategy, and it's built on three really powerful core principles. Let's break those down. First up, verify explicitly. This means you never, ever trust someone just because they're on your network. Nope. Every single time someone or something tries to access a resource, it has to be authenticated and authorized. And we're not just talking username and password. We're looking at everything. Who is this user? Where are they logging in from? Is the device they're using secure? Trust has to be earned from scratch every single time. The second principle is called least privilege. So once you've verified someone is who they say they are, you don't just hand them the keys to the entire kingdom. No way. You give them access only to the specific things they absolutely need to do their job, and nothing more. This is huge because it dramatically shrinks your attack surface. If an account ever does get compromised, the potential damage is contained. And finally, the third principle, which is maybe the most important one, assume breach. This is a total mindset shift. You stop focusing only on building walls to keep attackers out. Instead, you operate as if they're already inside. This forces you to build really solid systems for spotting a threat fast, shutting it down, and fixing the damage. It's about being proactive, not just waiting for the alarm to go off. Okay, this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually, do it? Well, the great news is, if you're using a major cloud provider like AWS, you've already got a whole toolkit at your fingertips ready to build out a Zero Trust architecture. Let's map this out. To verify explicitly, you'd use a tool like IAM Identity Center. It lets you manage all your user identities from one central spot. For least privilege, you use IAM roles to create super specific permission sets for different jobs, making sure a developer can't just wander into the finance data. And to assume breach, using a multi-account architecture is a game changer. It basically creates digital watertight compartments, so if one area gets hit, the damage doesn't spread. Okay, that handles identity and access. But what about the network traffic itself? This is a classic problem, right? How do you let your different applications talk to each other without sending all that sensitive data over the wild west of the public internet? Well, this is where a service like AWS PrivateLink is so cool. It basically creates a private, secure tunnel inside the AWS network. So as you see here, the traffic goes from your app through a private endpoint and straight to the AWS service, and it never ever has to touch the public internet. By design, you are assuming the public internet is a dangerous place, and you're granting the least privilege possible to your network traffic. And of course, it doesn't stop there because Zero Trust is all about having layers of defense. You'd use things like security groups, which are like a mini firewall for every single one of your servers. You'd absolutely enforce multi-factor authentication because we all know a password alone just isn't enough anymore. And you can get really smart with conditional policies, granting access only if a user is in the right country or only during business hours. Now, as powerful as all this is, I want to be clear. Implementing Zero Trust isn't like flipping a switch. It really is a journey. So let's talk about some of the real-world challenges and why even with those challenges, it's so strategically important. So the hurdles are real. Managing thousands of different identities and policies can get incredibly complex. You're always trying to find that perfect balance between locking things down tight and making sure your team can actually get their work done. But honestly, the biggest hurdle is often the culture, getting an entire organization to shift its mindset from trust by default to verify everything. And that brings us to maybe the most important point of all. Zero Trust is not a one-and-done project. It's not something with a clear end date. It is a continuous, ongoing strategy. You are always assessing your defenses, always adapting to new threats, and always improving your controls. It's a living, breathing part of how you operate. So why go through all this trouble? Because in the world we live in today, adopting a zero trust model isn't just a good security idea. It is your number one strategic advantage. It lets you innovate faster and safer because you know you have a resilient architecture that's actually built for the modern, messy, distributed world. So I'll just leave you with this question. In a world of constant threats, is your security a brittle wall, just waiting for that one crack that brings the whole thing down? Or is it more like an adaptive, intelligent organism, one that's built to survive and even thrive in a hostile world? That's the choice Zero Trust puts in front of us.